Congratulations.
Thank you.
Oh, what's that?
I got the director's aid for purchasing,
Oh,
So
so
I
you'll be
don't-
leaving us?
probably.
Yeah.
I don't know who's gonna take my spot, but
Well, congratulations.
I
That's
plan
great.
on training them. You know, I want them to be sure to get everything, because when I was trained
Yeah.
on doing this, girl, I was left with nothing.
Yeah. Is that right?
You trained yourself.
Yeah.
That's
Pretty
good.
much.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just, and I don't know when that's gonna start. I know that it's at least a month away, because I gotta do both jobs before, and I gotta train somebody from my job before I can go.
Your real job?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, wow. Well,
And
congratulations.
I don't know if you saw my email yet.
I didn't know.
Okay, so yeah, if you can just let me know if there's a year range that you wanna look at.
Okay.
You know, I don't know that we need to go back to like
Yeah, right.
1900 and whatever year or whatever, you know, it's been going for a long time, so.
That sounds so long ago, though. 1900.
2000 was so long ago. Oh,
Like I
gosh.
say, I'll be happy to get that for you, but just like I said in my email, so a lot of times, just historically, what we've done when we brought the fund balance carry forward, it was an adjustment for, was it Pensacola, ACE, PSA, you know, we had I guess it was under the chamber at one time, but basically it was, generally it was for promotion of some sort, and, adjustments to reserves. So,
Okay.
we build some in, normally, let me say this, let me rephrase that. Normally, we build some reserves into the beginning budget, and then we add some additional reserves after that, you know, for cash flow purposes.
Okay.
So,
Now, if we, if we ask to, take a certain amount for restricted, then you really, if we start doing that, you really wouldn't have to build in reserves at the beginning of the budget, because it's just, a fund that's automatically growing. Is that?
yes, so what I would say is, of your available cash, basically, which is generally what equates to, some portion of that's gonna be your budgeted reserves. So whatever percentage, like say if y'all decided 15%, 20%, 25%, that'd be the first thing that is held back.
Mm-hmm.
And then any additional allocations, for tourism or promotion would come next.
Okay, great.
And just so I understand, Stefan, so Visit Pensacola's only been around for 6 years now, right? So the fund balance carryover is from even before that?
So
We had
we
the
had the chamber.
chamber.
Yeah,
Right,
the
and the
chamber had
chamber
it for
ran.
years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we used to do, we had a downtown chamber, the Pahito Key
Yeah.
chamber, and,
Pensacola Beach Chamber.
yeah, we had several chambers.
Hey,
So
Darren.
do they have funds that were
Good
left
afternoon.
over
Good
every
afternoon.
time, like we have now?
Everything, from a financial perspective, it works the same.
Works the same way.
Yeah, they got the money, if they didn't spend it, gotta give it back.
Okay.
Most times they spin it though. I mean,
Yeah,
they
spent most of it,
Yeah,
certainly,
it
yes.
was, there wasn't as much money as we have now. I don't
Yeah, it
think.
was a lot,
Yeah.
money was a lot different. It was a
Yeah,
lot smaller.
totally. So, I remember the days when the chamber had it and it just,
Yeah, it was small.
yeah. All right, we'll call the meeting to order. Thank you all for being here. Any public comment? Ray, we appreciate you. No, that's all right. We appreciate you coming.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Great. The minutes were sent out to everyone, and I hope you had a chance to review them. The only thing that I had made a note on the minutes that I read was that David Baer wasn't present at that meeting.
Okay.
He was at the first meeting, but was not at that meeting.
I will fix that.
All right, did anybody else have any changes or additions to the meeting minutes?
I do.
Okay,
So just to correct myself, so at the last meeting, we were talking about, like cost allocation and things, and it looked like it was 7%. It's actually 4, so that was a mistake on my part, so just correcting the minutes from the last time, was not 7%. The cost allocation indicates that, 4% is basically the administrative
Administrative.
overhead.
okay,
For the TDT.
Correct.
okay. All right, Any other changes? All right, if I could have an approval of the minutes with the 2 changes.
So move.
All right, in a second?
Second.
Great, thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
No opposed. Okay, what I'm hopeful that we can do today, and we gotta start somewhere, so I have written out some notes, more, I've got one right here. And this is bare bone, okay, but I thought we gotta start somewhere, and that's why it's double spaced, and so my thought is, this is for discussion, that we are to be making a recommendation to the Board of County Commission, and that's why we were formed. That we were asked to develop a recommendation to implement an annual restricted fund of TDT dollars for future allocations as needed. And we might be even a little bit more restrictive in there as to what, rather than as needed. And so I suggest that we call these monies, the Escambia County Reserve Fund, and the suggestions of the percentages to be considered. I like the fact that we would do the 20 to 25%. All they can do is say no, and maybe if you ask for high, if they go lower, it may not be as low as you would think. And then, so right now, on our budget, that to be reserved for 2022, if we did 20%, we would be setting aside 5.6 million. If we did 25%, we would be set aside 7 million. Sounds like a lot, but the monies are there, and we might, and again, we've got to think about if they're going to approve this or not. And this is going to be, the board will have to make that approval. And then in addition, as we had talked about, rather than being part of the reserve fund, we would set aside $500,000 a year to be accumulated for beach renourishment, so we have it when we need it. All right, and then we'll go through this, and then I want to come back and have some discussion on each topic. What I would think is that we either need to have, when the county commissioners decide, and we need to put parameters of what the reserve fund can be used for, or what we suggest this reserve fund be used for. But do we want a supermajority vote, so it takes 4, or do we want it 3-2? So that is, I put in here a supermajority vote, but I don't know if that's the best thing to do. So, and then it's to mitigate the effects of a natural or other disaster or an unanticipated adverse financing of capital projects, provided that in the absence of a natural or other disaster or unanticipated adverse event or problem, the monies on deposit will never go below $5 million. So we always have something. You know, if we put in this fund for 3 years and not have to touch it, we've got a pretty good stash of money. And so we need to have that it won't be reduced more than a certain amount. So, questions, comments, changes? Like I said, this is a start of what we've got to do.
I think, first of all, if the name itself, if it could be Escambia County Marketing Reserve Fund, that was just not
Okay.
it's just not a fund for Escambia County, and it's
Oh, okay.
targeted towards marketing.
Escambia County Marketing. Maybe we need Escambia County Restricted Marketing. Hi, David. So glad you could be here. I passed out, David, notes that to get us to a starting point of something. And the starting point is just from things that we talked about at our last meeting. and I wanted to get something on paper. So, we're going through this, and on this sheet that says my personal notes, and, we're talking about the name of it. So, so you would like to see it, the Escambia County, should we say restricted marketing reserve fund, or just, Escambia County Reserve, Marketing Reserve Fund? That's fine with marketing.
I'm good with either. Restricted is good too, so it
Yeah.
kind of puts
You may want to just
exclamation.
say, like, tourist development, you know,
Yeah.
instead of Escambia County per se, I mean, because it's really
Right.
It's
specific
only a
to the-
Escambia, right.
Yeah.
To the tourist
Yeah.
development tax.
So we would
restricted.
say the tourism development tax, marketing,
I like the word restricted.
Restricted, I
It
do
sends
too.
a message
yeah,
by its description.
I agree. So
So
then,
it'd be
TDT restricted fund.
Yeah.
or just if you wanna-
TDT, Restricted Marketing Reserve.
There you go.
okay, all right, yeah, that sounds good. So then that way, okay,
And then, I guess I have a few questions.
Sure.
From just all this. Do we have a number in mind that, I know we have a minimum, but do we have a maximum number in mind that we want to not go over? Or, and, excuse me if I'm maybe way out in left field, but my feeling is that we're doing this so that we have like another event, like oil spill or COVID, or, and where we don't have to lose. Hurricane, and we don't have to lose, like Visit Pensacola had to
right,
lose 5 or 6 employees, and so, and then we stopped spending money and all that sort of thing,
Grant
so.
program on a way.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, my understanding is we're trying to do this so that we have those funds put aside, so that if something like that happens again, we have the funds to continue, doing what we need to do without a hiccup, or sort of say. So and I don't know, and I know what our annual budget is, but I don't know how long when like COVID hit or when the oil spill hit, how many months we went,
Right.
or how many months we were affected. I just don't wanna have a fund where it's $20 million or
Right.
$10 million and we only need 3 million or 4 million. But, you know, coming from a business
No, I
person's
understand.
perspective, capital just sitting there doesn't generate revenue.
right,
So, you know, we're taking money that could be used in marketing and sports and bringing people here, and we're just putting it in a pot. It's not, it's keeping us safe, but it's not
Right.
pushing tourism. So I'm a little worried that I don't wanna have such a huge pot that is sitting there, and, I did a little research, and, Pinellas County, they sort of have this same thing, and their pot got bigger and bigger and bigger. In 2017, the legislator changed what happened, and that pot of money was now used
Oh.
for something else.
Oh.
It was a huge pot. It got big and bigger and bigger. In 2017, legislators seeing that, oh, there's a lot of money sitting here. They actually changed, and they were able to take those funds and use
Yeah.
it for something else. And so I'd
It's a
hate for
good
that
point.
to happen.
Yeah, it's a good point.
So, yeah, so what you may want to do is say, like, if you did settle on 20%, but just say but the number, like, say, no more than 5 million, or no more than
Okay.
6 million.
Sure,
You know, 20% or this many millions.
uh-huh, that's a good
To
point.
provide a little perspective, I went back and took a look at what happened in fiscal year 20 and then fiscal year 21 as a result of COVID. And unified budget was, and I'm coming from a unified budget perspective.
Sure.
Because really, that was the entity that took all the hits, whereas anybody else that was
They got
receiving
paid.
TDT pretty much got all their money prior to that. So no one really was in a position to have dollars clawed back. And that's not the right term, is it? It's,
That's right, there.
They got their
They
money.
weren't going to call that.
They all got their money, didn't they?
But we, you know,
Yeah.
we are the only ones where we hadn't received all the money, so it was the only funds that really could be reduced. So it's important that who can access money is it for the unified budget, or is it for anybody that could make a request of these marketing reserve funds? So that's another issue. But when I looked at the unified budget, we started off going into that fiscal year, let's see. Well, the total TDT receipts were budgeted at like 12.6 million, and the unified budget was supposed to receive about 9.25 million. And then it was reduced, the supplemental amount was reduced, and I cut in half. So then it dropped to 7.8, and then we had to do another reduction on top of that. So in the end, the estimated, well, the unified budget was reduced to $5.7 million from about 9.25.
So,
So, you know, that was a cut. I'm trying to go back and look at those numbers. I kind of blacked out the whole period of my life. I'm going back. So at the minimum, it was a 26% cut or $2.375 million. I also have another number that it could have been as much as a 38% cut when you take a look at that reduction. Then the next year, because TDT was budgeted super low at less than $10 million, our budget was even less. So the difference again was, you know, for us, compared to 2019 to what even fiscal year 21 was, it was a difference of $3.37 million. Again, so 2 years in a row. Well, we had to cut in 20, and then that cut just continued into 21 because it was extremely conservative at $10 million, under $10 million, and yet we collected $17 million. So there was a little line in there that, hey, if collections were up, you could probably ask for more money in a supplemental. Well, we didn't really know, and that big bump really didn't happen until April. So, but the 5th cent was another piece of that. So in all, between those 2 years, there's a difference of about $4.6 million. So when I take a look at how the unified budget was impacted, you know, having a reserve between that $4 and $5 million mark, I think it's justified. Now, is what we experienced in fiscal year 2021 going to be the worst case scenario? It doesn't get much worse than that, right? You have Helen lodging completely shut down, plus the hurricane, plus the bridge. You know, I don't know if we'll ever get that kind of trifecta again. I hope not. I hope we don't have to go through that.
well, and you're absolutely right. The good thing is right now, there is excess money that we could start doing a reserve. And so if timing was ever gonna happen, we're at the better timing right now to do something because of what happened to us in the past and because there's dollars to be able to do it.
Now, Pensacola Sports, we actually do have a proposal or just some ideas that does also include some cap suggestions.
Okay.
So I can pass that around as well,
Sure.
and then we can kind of use that to compare
Right.
what Shirley has.
Well,
Dana, was there some funds, that we got and then we had to, or did Pensacola had to give back because we did not allocate them or budget them? Was there a certain amount of?
There was like a payroll protection loan, is that what you're talking
No,
about?
there was, I remember some sort of funds that came in and, the county had asked and, or you had suggested that we didn't properly have time to
Yeah, it was like
manage.
half a-
We had a carryover,
$500,000.
20 into 21, that was about $500,000,
Okay.
$540,000.
That we did not end up using, right? We gave.
We were
carried-
allowed to carry it over
Right.
to the next fiscal year.
Was that a carryover funds that had previously
We
been?
got an
I thought there
allocation
was a
right at the
separate
end of the
allocation.
fiscal year, we're like, great.
Yeah, so
What do we
We
do
had
with
like
it?
2 months to
To-
spend it, or, yeah, I mean, it was a very tight window, and it's like, the best use of these dollars if you allowed us to carry this forward.
Yeah. But it was a separate, so there was the original appropriation for unified budget that got cut a couple of times. And then at the end of the fiscal year, you came back and requested that $500,000 and the county approved that, but then you needed to carry it forward,
Right.
right? Okay,
Yeah.
so those were, it was still under that total original appropriation for the year,
Oh,
but
yeah.
it was a second, like, okay, they're asking for it, we need to try to help them
Right,
out,
that,
like
and
we
then
did with the
there
base
was an
center.
allocation of the CARES Act money that was $500,000 too,
Yeah.
which helped mitigate some of that lower budget.
Okay. Laura, if you want to go through this, that would be
Yes.
great.
So at the top, that's with the budget, for, that Stephen, that was in the minutes, from the last meeting.
Mhm.
And then, so that is kind of from the percentage, if you go down, towards the bottom where it says, 25% for facility reserve, and then 25 for unified budget, 10% special event, 10% for beach renourishment. That's this up here, just for the funds for that year that we know of. So that's just what that percentage, of an idea
Breakdown.
of numbers, going forward annually, with the cap, of each of those, reserve buckets.
Okay.
And then we're also proposing that it is a supermajority as
Mhm.
well. And then that, if you look at the bottom where it says, carry forward to 108 for balance, that would be, if you use those percentages, that would be the funds that would be left.
Yeah, TDC's a majority plus one
Mhm.
approval, and then a supermajority by the
Supermajority.
BOCC.
Yes.
Yeah.
I didn't know we're sure come up with something different more than just
No,
Straight.
I think the supermajority is,
for the,
4 out of
for the
5.
BOCC and then the TDC have a little bit more than just a standard
Yeah,
majority.
I think that,
And the top half basically takes the money that Stefan has told us that's sitting there and kind of kick-starts these things with some ideas of where you could put some of the monies now to get you off of ground zero, even though there's money in the beach renourishment of $500,000 right now, right, Stefan?
Correct.
So this would boost us to $1.5 million with a
Right.
cap of $5 million.
right,
That would really make it a quick get to that point, and then those dollars become back available for ongoing purposes, hopefully in a couple of years. And the 3.2 covers any, your cash flow
okay.
challenges. I don't know if that's,
Now-
again, these are just,
These numbers, so these are suggestions of where we start, and then are you saying every year add 2
Yep, until the cap.
to the cap is done, I see.
Okay, so you're saying as of March 15th, there was $11.5 million in
Yep.
fund balance. And is that 100% unencumbered?
yes.
So there's other funds in there that are encumbered for like, well, I guess beach access finished, I don't know if it's been paid for. And the other projects,
So,
does that include the
so that
beach projects?
11,496, so 223,9 was for the beach, Pensacola Beach, water,
For the water tower?
the water tower. 47,615 was is the balance for the Perdido Beach access. 52,528, the balance for Bob Sykes rehab. And the rest of it's available.
That's all coming out of the 11.5?
Okay, I misunderstood. I
Alright,
thought
so
that was
how much of
completely,
that-
It is encumbered.
I thought that was
Yeah, so-
completely unencumbered.
Roughly, yeah, how
and
much is that?
allocated.
Does that also include the other projects that the county commission have approved for beach? The new roofs on the pavilions,
Yeah.
the bathroom rehab, and the deck stairs?
So, some of those may be included in the current budget,
Oh, they are, that's right, that was that 845,000.
and these are
VLCC
last year's
projects.
monies that we're talking about now. So,
Vendor hijacked.
so the total of these is $324,043.
Okay,
324, what?
043.
so it's roughly 11 million, and
It's
that's,
11.1.
yeah.
Yep, 11,172,546.
Right, and so you're saying, your suggestion is from that 11,172, 46, allocate the roughly 1.5 to the unified budget?
I was just making it a clean 10 million to
Yeah.
start from there, David. That was
Uh,
just a number because we know that the number's somewhere between 1, 3, and 2 in the,
For the fifth cent.
for the 5th cent, and,
Yeah, I came up with something closer to 1.9.
yeah, it's a bigger number than that, but the reality is we're in April, and are the three entities of the unified budget, do we need more than one, whatever that number, we make that number whatever we need to make it. I was just like clean numbers, and I would wipe it clean and start with 10 million to go start funding these other things,
Or even 11 maybe.
and still leave you with,
Carry
Carry
forward.
a good carry forward to handle, cash flow. That at the end of the year would then be distributed at the 25, 25, 10, and 10. Or whatever this group decided to do, but again, these are just starting talking points, just like you did, Shirley, just
Right.
something to start
Something to start,
conversations.
exactly.
What are facilities? What facilities are you doing?
Yeah, the,
Facility reserve with restrictions for 2 million and then the 25%. No cap.
I'm sorry,
There's-
What are you talking about when you talk about the facility reserve?
what am I talking about? I'm
Restrictions,
talking about beginning a reserve for a facility development, but not have a cap on that.
so you're talking about the
Putting-
base center?
Putting in
or-
$2 million right now into a facility TBD.
Is that restricted?
It's restricted to a facility, a tourism,
Could be a conference center, could be a
Yes.
sports facility.
Could be upgrades to the base center, could be any of those things.
Okay.
Okay. Where you get the 500,000 for base center engineering and 500 for sports?
it's
Yeah.
way too much. It's way too much. Probably, both of them are probably double. I have estimates on what both of those will cost. The reality is in the case of the Bay Center, we don't know what the actual situation of it is before we go put $10-15 million into it. We need to know what the status is, and so I'm just trying to earmark some money right now while we have that money to say we need to do that. And then we have the idea on a sports facility out at 10 Mile Road and a piece of property that belongs to the county, but we don't really even know whether the engineering works out there. So at some point, we've got to start that. And this is more than enough money to do both of those.
Okay. It's not based on any proposals or anything? You're just estimating.
Only conversations of examples of proposals that I have,
But nothing hardcore. No, but-
nothing hardcore.
Ray, do we still have the sports study and the
Yes, sir.
Bay Center study we
Yeah.
did?
Well, the Bay Center was never really studied. The Bay Center was just included in a sports venue feasibility study. Because all the studies said, we really don't want to include the Bay Center because it's not really designed for the sports tourism the way that most people think of it. While the Sun Belt has been a real gift, it's not the way you normally want to do. You usually want 20 soccer fields or 10 basketball courts and volleyball courts in large flat space. And they're more of a performance arena. While it can have a sports component, they've never really looked at that. They included it only because the administrator at that time said, please tell us something about it. But yes, we have all those studies. The original study, and then we had a second study confirming what we knew the first time.
Right.
And that may need to be a little bit, probably updated a little bit
Updated,
more.
yeah,
And that would be part of this.
right.
And what's the difference between, and I feel like I'm so new to this whole process and y'all are throwing out numbers that I
Rapid.
barely know the definition of, the unified budget distribution allocation and then the unified budget marketing reserve.
So the unified budget, you want me to answer that? Okay, Darren, you want to answer it?
Yeah, I can comment on that. So this unified budget distribution allocation is a number based on money owed to the unified budget for the fifth cent.
Okay, okay, all right.
So that's pretty much what that amount is right there.
Yeah, that's an allocation to the unified budget.
Now,
Right. So.
When does that
Well-
stop, that 5 cent?
It stops at the
Tomorrow.
end of this, yeah, tomorrow.
tomorrow.
So that came to this carryover from the 5th cent.
Yes, so the
Okay.
5th cent was included, you know, our portion owed to the unified budget based on the county's commitment to
Yeah.
direct the first
Okay.
12 months
Okay.
to unified budget. So it's probably closer to 1.9. I mean, I gotta show Stefan my homework on that. But yeah, it's
Okay.
more than that, it's less than 2.
Okay.
They've given us a portion of that.
Okay.
This was part of that
This
balance.
is the remainder of it.
Stefan, so I understand that 5 cent or the portion of that is already in the 11.4?
Yes, so, and remember, this is last year's money, this is what was collected last year. It's not the monies that have been where it crossed the, we'll call it the state line, into the new fiscal year. But 659,165 is the 5th cent dollars that came forward
For
in this.
This year?
Or from last year, 659,165. That's the 5th cent available.
So
How is that? that's-
Because they forwarded, front projected some of the fund balance to give to you to support this year's budget
Yeah,
out of
I
the
don't think
5th
we
cent.
knew that, but they used some of the 5th cent.
They did 1.3.
We collected 2.4, and they used some of that to front our budget request, which
Out
was
of
the
the-
10.4.
oh.
I didn't,
they-
didn't realize that that's
They
how
never
that was.
communicated
No.
that with anybody.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
Not
because
TDC or,
No,
we knew the 5th cent was all
because
for,
that's not exactly, we already owed that money,
right.
above and beyond the budget.
and
request.
it's,
So did those funds then went to the Naval Aviation Museum and all those other outside agencies in the Base Center? They didn't go to the unified budget? Right, because it was allocated, the reallocation of the fund, balance was at the top. So it's distributed all the way through, whether that's 3% to the clerk,
oh,
the Base Center.
I'm not sure how it was done.
So the,
Nobody is.
the technical fund balance was the 1,969,617. And again, they did, my predecessor, they did basically a fund balance projection of 1,310,452. So the net of that is the 659. So that 1.3 is encumbered in your current year's activities, and 659 is what's left.
I'm not gonna say that that's proper. I have
I would say it's improper.
a, yeah,
So you're saying that
Because-
659 is still
So-
why
covered?
did we
They-
use
they
the other
gave you
$7
money.
million above and beyond? I mean,
Sure.
that would have been used to,
Yeah, there was 7 million that
but
was collected.
why did they come out of the 5th cent that was already owed to the unified budget? But because we're talking actual, not budgeted, we have to wait till actual numbers. It's just,
it's
I'm
not
not
how we
sure.
expected it, because
yeah.
with when it was passed for the 5th cent, it was 1 year, all of those dollars would go to the unified. Plus in
the
addition
unified
to
budget.
everything else that they, okay.
And maybe that was miscommunicated somehow or misunderstood, it's certainly possible. But
You're being very kind.
No, it wasn't misunderstood. It was, I mean, maybe by us, but because it was miscommunicated
Yeah, you're being kind.
to the TDC.
All right,
That was all pre-step.
Yeah.
that's
Yeah,
right.
we're not.
I was
He
running-
inherited it.
I was running it at the city before I got, I'm just kidding.
You were, okay. So then, let's go back then, if, so we're saying out of the current budget, you want, or you suggest, engineering for the 2 facilities, and then the facility reserve with restrictions. What is that? What does that?
I'm sorry, it should say without restrictions.
Oh, okay.
And the Unified Budget Marketing Reserve is what we're talking about, this committee is talking about creating, right?
Yes,
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
and that's the
That's the
Kickstart.
restricted
And
funds.
I have a cap of that of 10 million,
Mhm.
or it could be whatever number we're
Right,
comfortable
right.
with.
Yes.
I put 10 because I think you started with a really healthy kickstart with 2, And hopefully, like Darren just showed us, was the numbers is 5 is maybe more realistic, but
Well, my question is, and I'm switching a little bit, we right now have quite a bit of money, and that we need to, we're gonna try to reserve or so forth, or, because if we don't, I'm concerned that other projects in the county might find the pot of gold. So we definitely want for us to restrict as much, and it's happened time and time again. But so I guess what I'm wondering, so we're taking these out, and then every year, then we would start with what you've got down here, these percentages.
You're talking, those are how to fund those restricted accounts.
going forward, after
Going
you,
forward
after
after
you
this.
jumpstart them with the top half is taking the big pot of money you have and seeding
Seeding it
the
for,
various reserves that you want and pulling out for a couple of special allocations.
okay,
So that ties up that money. The balance gives you the cash flow you need, and then the percentages are going forward, and where those, and exactly how those are done.
right.
I would look to Stefan to say, and I would think you'd want it to read as close to how the county's normal reserve accounts are. That's why I put the language very vague, as long as they comply with TDT, state statutes and local county statutes on uses. And then enough votes to make it harder than normal.
Okay.
I'd also say probably some of these may be specific to one penny versus another penny as well. So
Right.
we need to differentiate which pennies these are affecting as well.
Could be, absolutely,
Yeah,
but I wasn't that smart. I
Just
think
so
it's
I-
pretty
just so I
pretty
Make sure
blurry.
I understand, Ray, so to 25% the facility reserve, are you saying that's 25% of our total collections?
My thought is it's 25% of your balance forward, carry forward at the end of the year.
Receipts above.
Above budget. Okay. I got
So if we
it.
budgeted for $10 million and we collected $11 million,
and
That's how you.
25% of
1
that.
million would then be,
Go in there, so that we're not just
Broken
having
out.
another
that's what you're
huge.
saying.
Right.
I think
As
that's,
long as you maintain some amount of carry forward as well. Because right now you recommend carry forward's 3.2 million.
right, carry forward, well, and out of that 3.2 million, I would then recommend taking 25 of the 3.2, or whatever that number ends at the end of the year, because it's probably gonna be bigger than 3.2, is that you would then take 25% of that, go to the facility, 25% of that, so that your 20, 50, 70%, and 30 remains going into your, stays in the county's 108.
And I don't mean to be jumping around, and I'm gonna ask this question, because I heard your name pronounced 3 different ways today.
You know, I just,
Stefan, right?
yes.
Stefan,
So,
okay.
yeah, there's Stephone, just whatever Steph, whatever, and,
hey,
you know, I don't even, it doesn't even bother me. I'm just like, yeah, as long as you
Okay.
ain't cussing at me, I'm good.
So, Stefan, the anticipated TDT budget for the next fiscal year, because we're already starting, things are due, is it, this year, the budget was 15,375,000, right? So it was a
Yes.
couple million under what we actually collected in the last fiscal year, because it was like more like 17.6. So we budgeted 15,375, knowing that we're probably gonna hit 20 million this year, or thereabouts. How do you see the estimated budget for the next fiscal year?
So what I would say is we do, just because we never know what's gonna happen, so we do budget a little more on the conservative side. But, based on, what we ultimately collected last year, we're gonna give some more based on the trend, you know, but yeah, there will probably still be additional capacity of maybe around 2 million, you know, so.
So you think it'd be like, more like 17 something or 18 million would be budgeted for next year?
Yeah, I think I've done some preliminary stuff. I've projected most of the revenues for the county for next year, but I'm still working on it. So, but I'll make sure I get you a good number on that.
Because I know our request, basically from the unified budget, is based on just the first 4 cents, knowing that the 5th cent, it's anticipated, and the Board of County Commissioners have been pretty adamant about setting that side specifically for facility development. I just got rate facility reserve, but they wanted to earmark that 5th cent. So
Yeah, I'll give it.
if we
I'll give
target
you-
just the 4 cents and we look at the 65% historical, to try to maintain the budget we have this year, that is averaging about 4 million a penny.
Okay. I'll have it broke down by each of the penny groups,
Okay,
so you'll be able to see between all the pennies.
and that's what I'm saying, because this last year, to get to where we wanted, the agreement then, because we were talking about ARPA, and we were talking about a lot of things to get to the budget we had this year.
Yeah,
And
the former county
in the
administrator
end,
said
they
one
just
and a
took
half
some of the
million.
reserve and added it into next year's budget up front, rather than a supplemental 6 months later, which allowed us to budget for the whole year and not just then try to figure something out for the last 6 months.
Yeah, the county
Or shorter.
The county administrator had said 1.5 million, 3 million of ARPA would go into TDT, 1.5 per year, because they were collecting the 61 million over the 2-year period, and so
That's right.
That never made it
FYI.
there.
FYI, that's what we thought the fund balance was at the beginning of the year to fund the allocations.
And that's right.
Apparently it wasn't, it was the 5th
Because I
cent.
think when the county submitted their
And that
grant
never made
request,
it there.
wasn't 3 million of that amount because of lost TDT revenue?
I think.
Yep.
That was my understanding.
Yep, and didn't,
So-
it-
Theoretically, that was supposed to come
Lost
back to the
revenue
180 fund.
should have been deposited in the fund.
yeah, and it was not,
It was
correct, David?
Correct. It was
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was never deposited into that fund.
There was the $500,000 allocation to Visit Pensacola from ARPA funds.
Yeah,
But that was
That-
outside of
Yeah, it didn't go
the
through
lost. Yeah,
one
it was more of a health and safety awareness campaign.
That's right.
The coastal distancing
That's right.
campaign.
Yeah.
It didn't have anything to do with the lost revenue.
but that was a commitment that she made, was that
On video.
$1.5 million each year
Hmm.
was going to, because of the impact on the tourism industry.
There lies the
Hmm.
miscommunication.
It's just not what happened, right?
Wasn't
There-
that part of
there-
their proposal to get the 61 million was, they
Yeah,
had
three
to,
Yeah.
Yeah.
this is 3 million with TDT,
Yeah.
1.5 each year. So, well, I have a couple of things. One, and I'll get to it about the beach renourishment fund, on your recommendation, Ray, but one of the things like I mentioned earlier about using the term restricted, I think the semantics are really important. And as an example, public facilities, we have in here the words are facility reserves, but under the statute, they specify 2 different categories of facilities. One is beach park facilities and another is public facilities. They have totally different standards for the county commission's authority over them. Beach park facilities does not have to come before the TDC for approval. They don't have to do the study to show the impact on economic development in the area where it's being done, et cetera. Public facilities do. They have to bring it to the county to the TDC, they have to do a report, et cetera. And they can only expend a portion of the project, 70% of the project can be funded through TDT. Beach park facilities like the beach ball, although that's marketing, let's say the bathroom, the roofs on the pavilions, as an example.
They never came to us.
They didn't come to us because they consider those beach park facilities.
I see.
And the statute is very vague on beach park facilities and what they mean. Just because it's at the beach, the county took the position that they're beach park facilities. There can be public facilities at the beach as well. They could be the exact same facility, but it has a totally different standard. So when we talk about creating these funds, restricted funds, I think we should be very specific on what we're talking about.
I
I think we
agree.
should call them public facilities, not just facilities. So that
Okay.
way, it requires the county commission to come to the TDC to get the recommendation. Because
Okay.
if we're being tasked with, by statute, for making the recommendation on tourism development, that should include all of the tourist development tax.
I agree.
And so it should come to us to let us review it, see the information, the data, and make a recommendation. We may be totally aligned with the county commission on how to use it, but without that definition, they don't have to come to us
Right. And they
if
had,
they can justify it as something else.
right, and they didn't this year. They've got
$845,000 worth of projects.
going to the beach.
So David, does the last paragraph, and at least what I wrote, and Shirley had some other good words in there, is access to the restricted reserve, add in the word restricted reserve and those guidelines of that they have to comply with TDT. Are you saying that needs to be clarified even further to the specific TDT statutes that you want to make sure?
Well, I would think the 25% has to have public facility reserve put in.
Yeah.
Oh,
Any-
yeah, well, I was kind of looking
Oh.
at top end both, but I was talking about how you were restricting it is, because we've got some requirements down there that it has to comply with the state statute first and foremost.
Well, in the state statute, it clarified, I mean, it has two categories, beach park facilities and public facilities.
And so
So
you're,
they have different standards.
and you would like to expand that to here?
I would like to include language that the restriction that we're putting in for facilities is public facilities.
Okay.
As defined in the statute.
Okay, so the public,
facilities.
the word public does that?
Yes.
Okay.
I think what we're gonna end up doing, like this carry forward and special event reserves and all that kind of stuff, special event reserve, whatever, but at the end of the year, and we're gonna wanna keep some funds in the fund. Keep some
Right.
Money in the fund,
Right.
that's unencumbered, unrestricted.
Board of County Commissioners is gonna wanna do that too.
Right, they're gonna wanna do that, and they're gonna require that, and so those funds could grow, and they can use those for beach park facilities that don't have to come through. But we wanna make sure that we're protecting some funds, that if we're talking about, like, facilities, whether it's the soccer fields or the, Bay Center or a new sports complex or whatever we're talking about, but we're talking about public facilities, not beach park facilities, and those funds need to be protected for that type. That's the intent. Let's specify that that's the intent.
And that's what the 3.2 would be a part of, and then anything else over actual budgeted collections would also be part of that number.
Right.
So you would still have that 108 balance.
So the other thing I was gonna say about beach renourishment reserves and restricted, and then funding it at each year, at the 10%, whatever, the 5 million cap. So this year, we recommended and the county approved that $500,000 for beach park, for beach renourishment. I don't know what the amount is that triggers them wanting to actually do the renourishment, the way they build it up to get the matching funds to do renourishment. I mean, Stefan, maybe you remember from the past when they did that. But if we're gonna continue to fund it out of the annual budget at $500,000 each year, I don't think we need to do what you're proposing in here. I think we set a cap, we designate, like, make the recommendations to the commissioners, but as a body, we say each year if we're gonna keep funding it as part of the budget, just like the budget goes to unified budget or Naval Aviation Museum, et cetera, it's just one of the appropriations. At $500,000, it's $500,000 per year, and then there's nothing on the backside that goes to it, because all they're gonna do is just continue to grow
Right.
that until it triggers the need to use it to try to get matching funds from
Right.
the feds and the state or wherever they come from.
Yeah, my thought was we're at $500,000. If you kick $1 million now you're $1.5 million into the cap of 5, that we get to that 5, then we get to that 5 million sooner, then that $500,000 now becomes unencumbered and unassigned, and it comes back into, to be allocated back out sooner. And again, putting away some of that 11 million so some people can't go get it, so that if we all of a sudden had to go do beach renourishment, we're ahead of the game.
And is 5 million a number, I mean, is,
Well, we talked at the last
Yeah.
meeting of it, 10
It's around 10.
10 was the number we thought, and half of
oh,
that
have to do.
is a
Right.
match.
And then some of it comes from TDT, some of it comes from Santa Rosa Island Authority, and then it's matched by the state,
Right,
right? So if it's $20 million project, $5 million comes from Santa Rosa Island Authority, $5 million gets covered by TDT. there you go, as long as that program.
And again, these are
state
just-
still exists.
Yeah.
Random numbers
Right.
based
I
on
don't
some
think
of the
TDT alone
conversations.
should pay for that. I
No.
think-
No.
I don't think anybody.
So property owners on the beach would, you know,
Yeah, no, and the Island Authority,
take care of that too.
they've got a kick in, so.
Yeah.
they-
And they have, I
And
mean,
we're-
they've
And
been
have a
covering it
budget,
all in the
yeah.
past.
And we're only talking about Santa Rosa Island because Perdido Key is private money, private beach all the way to the I-mean water line. So there's no public funds to be used for those
Oh, wow.
renourishment
That's
projects, unless they wanna make those public. Can't use
Yeah.
public dollars and then restrict access.
Right, that's why I forgot about that.
So
And if it's part of
Perdido Key wants to
the
change their,
reserves, those beaches aren't covered by that either, right? So Fort Pickens, that area, and as
That's
part of
federal.
the,
That's federal, so that's.
yeah.
I don't know if we've ever, I don't think we've ever reversed those.
Do we, if we do this, do we wanna write in that not to take the full obligation on and Santa Rosa Island Authority to think, oh, well, TDT's taking care of it now, so.
Yeah.
It's matching.
Matching,
Santa
yeah.
Rosa Island Authority,
Yeah, I think each one of these
Contribution.
funds should have its own operating agreement, I don't know what else to call it, but something that specifies how you trigger the use and what the use can be, and for beach renourishment, the use would require the matching from the state and from, whatever portion from the Island Authority.
Other outside agents, other agencies, however. you wanna word it. Again, this was just how do we tie up some of these pots
Right.
into the things that are important to us first and seed them. Whatever the numbers are, doesn't make a damn.
So if we put the $1 million in now for beach renourishment, if the beach renourishment isn't needed anytime soon, but facilities could be needed relatively soon, those monies would be encumbered, it would take us longer to get money for facilities. So my recommendation would be not to allocate that $1 million to beach renourishment and just let it grow from the annual allocation of the budget.
Sure.
Yeah, and that's the direction that I proceed too. So I know we had 500,000 budgeted this year, same thing next year.
Yeah, that's what,
Same thing. And then like I say, so that portion of the fund balance, so 500, say, if you do another 500 now, so it'll be $1 million. So then we know that it's $1 million as a portion of your carry forward and fund balance. There's $1 million, next year it'll be 1.5, then it'll be 2, and then it'll be 2.5, and
Would you increase some of the other pots with that $1 million?
I'd probably put it, my suggestion would be to put it in the facilities, public facilities.
mm-hmm,
I mean, we know that that's a need. We either have to do something with the Bay Center to make it, try to figure out how to make it operate without subsidy,
right.
and/or
That's
if it's gonna,
That's a bigger ROI,
right,
for sure.
Yeah.
or whatever new facility,
Right,
that might be needed to generate
Yeah.
additional revenue.
and Ray, with what, the basketball is asking for, I mean, we need to, if we're gonna continue to do things, and, it's a 30-year-old building, it needs some,
And that's
Yeah.
what this Bay Center Engineering Operations Study directly addresses, is the Sun Belt Conference needs,
yeah,
and others, modernization of the building.
well, I think, then I agree with David, I'd put the money,
In the public
We got-
facilities reserve.
yeah,
Does
We
that
got a
go
few
for that
areas.
percentage carry forward as well?
I would.
Yeah, so add the 10% to the facility for,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's what I would do.
And then we just, 500,000 a year for beach renourishment until we get to the cap of 5 million.
Yes. Then as soon as it's used, it starts again.
Mm-hmm, yeah,
I mean, I think other beaches have beach renourishment plans. I think the statute even
I think-
refers to beach renourishment plans. We don't have one. I mean, we're talking about,
right.
Now,
Right.
that's as much as we have.
Okaloosa has
Yeah.
one, they have like $16 million.
Yeah,
we had several $1 million of LOST that was earmarked that the commissioners went and pulled away, that was beach renourishment earmarked. It was
When you say say they pulled away, they spent it on beach renourishment?
No,
or-
Oh,
pulled it
something
out of the
else.
beach renourishment
Reallocated it.
pot, reallocated it. I think it was
Six,
LST.
$3. That's why we gotta get them to 4.
That's
Require
exactly
4.
right.
That's why I was
Yeah,
That's
I did the
not
same
like
thing.
putting some mad money back in there,
all right.
trying to get that fund back up to where it was.
Any more questions about, Ray, Laura, y'all did a great job on
Yeah,
this.
the special event reserve, how is that gonna be delineated? What is considered a special event? Who
I don't
can
know.
access that, who can request that money?
Well, I have it all coming through TDC with and again, maybe it's the tall ships that falls in our lap. I don't know what that is. That's a type of reserve that something, the Blue Angels that decide to do their homecoming show on the beach every year. Now, we would eventually budget for that. I don't know, some phenomenal art opportunity of some show that can come that comes to, says, hey, Mobile's got this phenomenal event coming in town, but their building is leaking and they can't show. I mean, I tell you, you got water ski, right? In 1998, his water ski called Shirley
Yeah.
and said, we can't host our water ski championships.
Can we
And
do it?
Shirley said, we can make that happen. And
Yeah.
in 30 days, we made
Yeah.
a world championship water ski. It was a huge event. But so you had to go
There's-
get special money.
Right.
That would be something that you would go and say, hey, guys, we have an opportunity. Let's use 50,000 of this. It doesn't have to be something that costs $800,000.
Well, also even TV, like something came to us that they were
Yeah,
gonna be.
Five Flags Speedway.
Yeah.
The
It
SRX.
has it's gonna be on
The
CBS.
SRX thing,
Yeah.
right.
The other thing,
$55,000.
did any of y'all ever see the show that Emmett Smith did with his dad?
Yes.
That
They
was-
redid the house?
Yeah, it was an NBC show or something. It showcased Pensacola beautifully. I mean, they went out, they were at Jackson's, they were at, Fish House, they were all around. And, it was a 1-hour show. And it was celebrity house makeover. And they came to town with the crew and they made over Emmett's daddy's house, and Emmett was here. But it was a great show. So, if they had asked, they didn't ask us for anything, which was a great problem to have.
Maybe that comes through our normal grant request program, but it's outside our normal. Somebody comes up with a great one that says, Ace, I need an extra $75,000 on this fantastic thing that's fallen in our lap. And y'all go, well, we've spent all our grant program but there's some funds here that if it's good, we can go ask for that.
Now,
Or if it's a sports events, that's what we do now,
Right.
is whatever that may be, that would open up that opportunity to go, oh my, we can't turn this down.
Right.
And you've tapped your budget, it's already allocated, but we don't want to turn down the opportunity to showcase our community.
what do you do, like, if we don't use that 800,000 this year or next year, or when this would be for?
Well,
Then what do we,
it carries over to a
Oh,
cap of
2
2
million.
million.
I see.
I mean, I will agree, it is nice to have a place to go when you have one-off situations. We didn't know that the Blue Angels weren't gonna all of a sudden do their event on base, and then the option was to take it to the beach, and how do we do that? Visit Pensacola ate $100,000 on that. That should have really come out of TDC, and that was
Right.
the plan, but because of the media concerns, it just didn't feel like you could go through that process and not have it all of a sudden be out everywhere that the show was being canceled or might be moved, but the racetrack is another example of that. Do you want things that, you're gonna have to have some rules, because I just know some of our event promoters in town will find ways to tap into these
Oh,
funds. And there may or may not be great ideas or produce the kind of benefits and national TV
Right.
coverage that, like the race will have for
Right.
us. So I think it's a good idea, because the Blue Angels would have been a great
Right.
way to
And
do that.
Will we be doing the Blue Angels
My-
homecoming show?
My understanding is they're gonna try to
Do it on the
bring it back
base?
to the base.
Okay,
Yeah.
but you can't go on that, right?
Not sure, you
Okay.
know, but that was the intention.
Yeah.
When I talked to Santa Rosa Island Authority, it ended up being a little bit more expensive than they were led to believe.
Sure.
But they turned around and made the revenue.
Oh, yeah.
'Cause
Of
it
course
was
they
good
did.
for them.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, because they're asking, they've called me. They want to meet with me to talk about, because it was more expensive. That's separate from this, but
Well, they asked me and I said, well, we ate the first 100,000,
Yes.
so I don't know, I could justify doing the rest of it.
Well, I think guidelines, but also having the restrictions of majority plus one and a supermajority by the BOCC are two steps that make it harder to
I think it
get
needs to
that.
go through TDC
It has
on
to
this
go
type
through-
of.
Has to.
special
I think it
request.
should go through our normal grant program and it be
Yeah,
brought
but
forth.
We will also want
If
to,
we
the
vet
wording
it-
has to be good, because somebody like Cadillac that is telling us, and I know he does a great event and so forth, but he would see this and want to
this is
tap
our
into it.
plan, right.
And I don't think this is what we were planning.
No.
Well, I think it should be, but then I think a good way to do that is to vet it through our normal grant program. And if we deem
Okay.
that it's truly a advantageous tourism and the funds are not currently existing, this would be a pot that we
That makes
could bring forward, that's basically what we did with the SRX racing, the
Yeah.
Five Flags.
Yeah,
Was, this one's pretty cool, this one's out of the box.
it's CBS, and, yeah, I think, okay. So
If that-
coming through the grant process,
So go through unified budget before it,
I-
before it ever comes to the TDC.
Yes.
and
Yeah.
TDC has a requirement of the supermajority and then or 50% plus one, whatever, more than a majority, and then BOCC supermajority.
yes.
I mean, that. And I think those things can happen.
That just brings
right?
major institutions into play on
Yeah,
this.
all
so
the industry
everybody's
play,
in
like
the
the
know.
major people working to develop tourism.
It
Yeah,
also holds us accountable,
right.
which is what we want. We want them to hold the unified budget accountable.
Is there any TV with the soccer, the SEC women's soccer?
Oh, yeah, a whole, the SEC, ESPN, SEC, ESPN will be here all week.
Oh, okay,
SEC
great.
In fact, they'll be here tomorrow for a site
Oh,
visit on how to
great.
set up all their television sets, but SEC Network will be on site 8 days.
Great.
The specialties event reserve that you have, Ray, so for instance, so this money would sit technically with the BOCC.
It all,
And we
It would
still
sit in
go
the
through-
108 account.
it all sits in the 108
one-way
account.
And then they would just go through the Visit Pensacola, TDC, and then hopefully that.
Right.
Because I know last time Cadillac Banks came here, I didn't even get hardly any information, and he was talking, and I was looking through the papers, and I was like, where's all his backup? Because, you know, I'm on the grant committee, and anybody that comes to the grant committee has all their, you know, especially if they've been doing it for 4 or 5 years, and he didn't have anything. And then I started calculating, he showed room nights, and it, I'm good with numbers, so I'm calculating numbers, I'm like, every room night, he's saying that he calculated cost us $170. I could do that all day.
Yeah.
I'll do it for half that at my own hotel. So, yeah, it doesn't make sense to me, you know, some people are getting money and their ROI on that is not making any sense.
Well-
You know, you're taking more money and you're bringing less revenue than what you took.
Well, he went to the Board of County Commissioners first,
Yeah.
and then they kicked him to us. But in essence, he should have gone through the grant process. They should have kicked him there.
Well, he did, he starts
He
there,
did.
but our grant program right now
Oh, it's
does
limited.
not, right, it's not enough money there for him.
Right.
He's not happy with the limits that we have in
Yeah.
the grant program.
And he's for-profit, so he's not eligible for an ACE grant.
Right.
But in his defense, it wasn't just about the number per room night, what was the total economic impact of the event? It wasn't just the room nights booked, but restaurants, gas, other things, other spend in the county, and he's got, I know a couple of years ago, they did, Majority Opinion did a report, and it showed.
We've been doing a report
Yeah.
we did a report on this last year, so
Okay.
he has that, he provided, I don't know if
Yeah.
he then turned around, but I'm pretty sure I provided it to the Board of County Commissioners,
Yeah,
Okay.
because there was a request for that.
it shows an overall economic impact.
Yeah, I just wanna make sure that if we have the funds sitting aside, that people Because once
Yeah.
one or two people see it, like, oh, I don't need the Visit Pensacola, I don't need
I don't need to
TDC,
go
I can
through
just go to
this
BOCC, and as long as I ask for more than 50,000, this is what I need to do. I just go to the BOCC, and there's $2 million sitting there.
Right.
But now
But-
they still have, if we put in these
Restrictions.
these guardrails, they have to go through this process.
One of the
Right.
programs.
They can't just bypass the process.
Right.
And you could put in there something also that it's not an annual recurring type event, that it has to be a special,
One-off.
one-off.
Yeah,
Maybe we want to add that type of,
yeah, I think that's a
Language.
good idea.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why we're restricting it, is when something pops up, an annual event doesn't pop up. It
Right,
happens every year.
right.
yeah. I
That's
woke up
what
in the middle of the
happens
night
every
and
year.
came
Yeah,
up
it
with
pops
this
up
great
every
idea,
year,
right? Ray Palmer special, right?
That's good.
Ray
Just a
Palmer's
curious question.
notorious
I mean,
for those
could-
middle of the
could
night
we-
ideas.
I know they've been called micro grants and things in the past that y'all do. I mean, is it possible to have monies available that would be sufficient to fund his ask with your group? I mean, is that possible?
Who, Cadillacs?
Yeah, like say,
Well, so his maximum grant or commitment from the county has been $150,000. It's an amazing amount of money.
By
Kudos
our
to him for
rules, it
getting
doesn't qualify.
Right, I think when the grant program was initially, this is before my time, when it was initially
Yes.
created, they didn't have a ceiling on the grant awards. So we may have, I think there was a grant award upwards of 80 grand at one point. I don't know if it was him or somebody else, but we had 80, there was a 50, I mean, and then the amounts were put a cap on, because we started getting all the requests. Initially, it's like, you have a grant program, you want to grant out some money, show what you're doing something. Then you get a lot of interest, and you're like, oh, well, now we maybe need to put a cap on this so that we can, more entities can take, make available, be able to take advantage of this. And then COVID knocked that out for a year, we brought it back in a limited capacity, and we'll raise the bar again. I don't know if it'll ever get over $40,000, $50,000 in the future, and that's, a third of what he has gotten at one
Right.
time.
So
And I can't,
And
I
also-
personally can't justify spending that much money on one
Right.
event. I just,
There's,
I think we
also
all feel
there's,
that way.
Stone, there's a
it's not a
scorecard
personal program, it's a
on
grant
what the
program, so-
value is based on what you produce.
Yeah.
And his scorecard, if you will, would never get him to the top of
I got
the grant amounts of the dollars that he would like to receive. So you base it on room nights and economic
It's a Labor Day
impact.
weekend event, I mean, there's a number of things with an event that's being held on a 3-day weekend already. You already have a 3-day weekend, which are pretty good for the Pensacola area. So to put an event on top of a 3-day weekend, I'm not sure if that's the
Minimal
best
though.
place to put an event that we want to fund and grow versus the beginning of November or
Right.
filling up February, like Pensacon and Mardi Gras have, and they've taken advantage of the grant program. Although there's a limit to the number of years. I think the existing events was 5 years, and then it's gonna be 3 years. It's meant to be startup money,
Yeah.
not an earmark and a permanent
Sure.
funding source. They should, when I run events, you need to develop sponsors, you need to find a way to financially support yourself and not expect to someone else to pay you to do your event, because it's a passion project.
Yeah.
The Visit Pensacola's, if you recall, Visit Pensacola's grant program was created when the county commissioners used to have $50,000 each discretionary, and we were kind of forming that unified budget, because they didn't want everybody coming with their handout, so they took that 250,000 total for the 5 commissioners and put it into Visit Pensacola to create the grant program.
Yeah.
So we get all those requests.
Yeah,
And
so they
we
get
have
them
a program in
instead of
place to,
county
yeah,
commissioners.
yeah.
It takes the politics out, it doesn't really take the politics out, but it takes the
Right.
politics away from the county commissioners.
It's time consuming for the county commissioners, I'm sure.
Oh,
So that
yes,
Took a lot off their.
And very political.
Yeah, very.
Time consuming for Visit Pensacola.
Yes.
And I know over the last 3 years, we've been getting, we're learning, so we're getting better at it too, the grant committee.
Well, the one thing that when we restrict it, and I agree with you, however y'all do the grant program is good, but if there is somebody like, and I know it's seed money for X number of years, but say Pensacon came to us and said, this year, for whatever reason, the Civic Center costs are going up, and I haven't budgeted that, I would think a proven event like a Pensacon would deserve, even if they've already gotten grant money for 3 years, to extend that. I don't know if you have the leeway to be able to do that or not, but that is an event that I think we all see a lot of benefit from.
For sure.
Oh, for sure. They're for profit.
Something like that, if something that is outside the parameters of the program, because once you do a kindness, you
Yes,
know,
I
you
know.
definitely get punished for that.
I know.
So it would have to be something that'd probably go before the full board to say, we have a situation, an opportunity, whatever you
Right.
wanna call it, outside of the parameters of our grant program.
Okay.
The board can always vote to do something.
Or it
outside
can be
of-
brought to the TDC,
Good.
with the blessing of the TDC,
Sure.
recommended
Tap
to the.
into some of the
Yep, that's
3.2 million, that's in the account for those kind of things
Or the
too.
special event.
That way, the
That's-
integrity of the grant
Yeah.
program can survive
Right,
and
Right.
it doesn't all fall apart.
Will Smith decides to, oh no, maybe not Will Smith,
We'll take them a slot of coverage.
Yeah,
decides to come in for.
so, all right, I'll take the
Pensacon.
slap, I'll do it.
okay, go for it.
Yeah, I think the grant programs, the three that entities have is, like, the integrity of those is important, not to change because of whatever reason, political pressure, requests, whatever. I know, like, when I was the president of ACE, we had requests, like, with, who was it, Frank Brown Songwriters Festival. They used to get $40,000 a year, and Gene Valentino said, well, we'll just give the 40,000 to ACE and they'll just pass it through. And I said, don't do that. Don't do that to us, because then we no longer have control over our program. And now you're telling all the other ones who go through our process and have a percent that they can request, you know, a certain amount they can request, and have to jump through all these hoops, they don't have to do it anymore
Right.
because of, you know, what the county commission directed. Either don't give it to us and just continue to allocate it directly, give it, I think we told them to give it to Visit Pensacola, and Visit Pensacola did that exact same thing. Took care of it, and our program was intact. Like, we could stand up the next year and say, no, we're not going to, you know, here's,
Okay.
you want funds from ACE, here are our guidelines. This is the eligibility criteria, and this is the application process, and go through the whole process. And as long as we can continue, these agencies can continue to hold steady on those, we create this extra reserve fund for anything that's outside of those programs, but then run them through this process, through the unified budget, through the TDC to the county commissioners. I think it keeps the program's integrity intact,
And
but provides that access and that availability for those needed programs.
And a selling point to the county commissioners by doing it this way, they get hit personally. But if they're able to say, no, you need to take it back to the TDC, you need to go through this, then, you know, if they support it, I'll support it, but you gotta go on that end.
Yeah.
I
I
mean,
mean,
that's,
whatever this committee is deciding is gonna go to the TDC, who's gonna recommend this
right,
to the county, and the county's gonna have to set policy to follow all these procedures, either do it or don't. And if they want it to happen that way, they're gonna have set policy
Right.
in order to make it happen.
right.
Well, they love for us to be the bad guy.
I think so, too. Yeah,
Right,
I really
absolutely.
think so, and that's
So we're just
okay.
giving
Or
them
the good guys,
opportunity
yeah.
to
Yeah.
pass, responsibility.
Okay. Is there
The due
any
diligence does.
more discussion on, the numbers, or, do you see something? Are we gonna, is the county commissioners, when we say the Bay Center engineering and the sports facility design, are they going to, have a problem with that?
I think they're gonna have a problem with the dollar amount, because it's not based on real estimates, like
I would agree.
Yeah,
proposals.
that's what I was thinking.
I mean, if it was 250,000 and that's what the proposal says, I don't think they're gonna have any issue with it. I don't know how we can get proposals anytime soon, but this isn't going before,
These wouldn't be reserved, these are more like requests.
This is allocation,
Yeah.
yeah,
And this is up to, because it ain't, we're never gonna get to this number. I just don't wanna have to go back,
right.
but there's no way.
well, so if those funds weren't literally listed on this sheet, then that 3.2 becomes 4.2 as a carry forward, then, you know, that's what's, really left over in the fund, encumbered by these other restrictions we're
Yeah.
talking about.
I was just, part of,
Then we
I'm
just
sorry,
go to the
Dave.
county, that's all right, then we just go to the county commission and say, hey, we need to do this study. Y'all wanna invest in these projects, these programs, you know,
Yeah.
facilities, we need to do a study to do it, this is where the funds exist.
This is a little
Pay for it.
outside, this is a little outside what the initial task of this organization's, this committee you assigned was. But when I came to the meeting and Stefan was talking about, we got 11.4 that we need to start that I can allocate now, set aside, Stefan,
Stefan,
the guy down there with the suit, the guy that looks nice. Anyway, so I was as much trying to pull some of this money to get it out of, so that he can, what is the term you use? Allocate it or earmark it,
Right.
designate it, what's the right word, Stefan? Restrict it. And then there is no way, in fact, I suspect that half of this will be the real number on the high side.
Okay,
But I would like to have more than enough put aside than too little, so that 3.2 is probably gonna go to 3.7 by the time you get to the end of the year, whatever. And I don't know if that's even the job of this committee anyway, but
Couldn't
that's
you
how I was
just-
getting to numbers.
Because wouldn't you just go and ask for the money out of the public facility reserves, like?
I wouldn't wanna
could
go
that-
into any reserves, I wanna go get it. I don't want this to go to the reserves, I want it to be allocated out of the existing big pot of cash he has right now.
But you could put that into the public facilities reserve with restrictions and use those funds to study your public facilities.
Absolutely, you could.
So then it's restricted. If it goes into those funds, it's restricted and we know the source. It's been put there for that
Except then
purpose.
it requires the supermajority plus one plus the supermajority,
Yeah.
which I still am okay with that, I don't care.
I mean, if they don't support it, we're not gonna do it anyway.
But
If
three
they support
votes,
studying it, they're not gonna
the
support
top,
studying
the
it.
top half is 3 votes.
Yeah,
Going to
then
get
it's the
any other
reserve
afterwards
amounts that they
is,
have to,
requires
supermajority,
more.
yeah.
Yeah, that's okay. You mean to spend it? Yeah, but if they're agreeing to restrict it for future public facilities, we can't do public facility improvements without studying what to do. And so those funds could come out of that bucket, and they're gonna vote a supermajority to do it.
And it just makes 25%, if we take those out of there and then make that bottom number smaller, then that number, that 25% is gonna be bigger, so it should be able to come out of there.
But you're not, you're just taking it and moving it into the,
Just take
from
it-
the $2 million facility reserve restrictions, you're making it 3.
Right.
Isn't that what you're
Oh,
saying?
I
Getting
see,
rid of
I
those two
see.
line items.
Oh,
It's
okay.
above the 3.2, so
Oh, okay.
3.2 stays the
Four.
same,
I see.
Beach
Yeah, plus the
renourishment?
beach, you're.
and plus
Yeah,
the
so that'd
beach.
be
yeah.
4, and then the 25 has gone to 35 because the 10% beach renourishment
Right.
moved,
Yeah.
because there's already a half
Yeah.
a million going
Well,
in
if
every
you-
year.
Every year.
Of course, none of these percentages take into account that you're gonna wanna have some money in there,
Right.
in that account. Or you need to maintain a certain amount of money in that account.
Well, that's
And that's only.
4.2.
You say, what?
That's your 4.2.
You're not gonna have 4.2.
You're gonna have more than that.
Well,
Here you
maybe,
are.
but based on this, cause you're taking this 1 million, you're taking that 500,000 and that 500,000, and you're putting it into that 2 million to create 4.
For,
So this number
Oh,
doesn't
I'm
change.
sorry, you're taking the beach renourishment and putting it
Yeah.
in the facility.
Yeah,
That's right, I forgot, I thought you were just deleting
yeah,
it.
no, take those 3 buckets and put it in the one right below.
Gotcha.
and would that facility reserve without restrictions be, public
That's
facility?
what I would call
Public.
it,
Yeah.
public facilities.
Okay.
With restriction.
I'd put
A
quotes
with?
around it.
Yeah,
Make
it's
sure
supposed to
they
say,
understand what we're talking about.
it says with.
I'm sorry, is it with or without?
With restrictions.
With, okay, then I put, I don't know,
Public facilities, parentheses,
so,
as outlined in statute 125.
So the only other number discussion is the unified budget, original distribution and allocation.
So
Does that
so the
number
public
change?
facility with restrictions would be 4
Be-
million?
4 million.
Out of this,
Cause the three above it are.
So the beach renourishment would be out of there.
the base center engineering and the
Yeah.
sports facility line.
Yes,
So those 2 million go down to the public facility reserve and restriction.
and then at the, rather than, weren't we just gonna do a flat 500,000 each year? Rather than 10% beach
Yeah,
renourishment,
we're gonna,
do 500,000?
yeah, we're gonna.
Again, that was me padding whatever.
Sure.
No, you're gonna have 500 if we wanna make it happen faster.
Yeah,
I don't think
Well,
we
isn't the
need- I don't
five
think we
hundred
need to
thousand
have-
part of, historically, if unified budget's getting 65%, that other 35% this year includes 500,000
right,
for beach renourishment.
Right.
And that's where it'll be, it's be part of that
35.
right, not of the,
35%,
right, not of the
for
65.
4% if
Correct.
we can maintain that historical importance and, commitment to destination marketing. Step. The other,
We're very committed.
Yes.
the, let's see, I had one other question for you. Is there a certain amount of money that historically has been kept in the 108 account? Just, hey, we like to keep like $1 million in there or a couple million in there.
We've usually had somewhere between three and a half million, just as a budgeted reserve for cash flow reserve, basically.
Okay.
But we've also, if things went sour, and there've been a couple of times.
Does the 2 million advance come out of that then? Is that how that's available come, October 1
When you say advance.
for the unified budget? The
Oh.
2 million?
So, correct. So some portion of your cash flow is part of that, yes.
Yeah, okay.
So I think the email request that I had, maybe if you send it to Tina, she can send it to everybody. The
Okay, I do a
concept.
reply all between you two,
Okay.
on my response.
Okay.
Oh, okay, so she'll get it, and if you'll
Yeah.
send it to everybody.
By the way, I left the country the day
I
you
know,
sent
you
my email.
Costa Rica.
I know, I was like.
And so I didn't respond, and then I was in depositions last week, so I haven't
It's
gotten.
just,
I know.
it's
It's
this
like, I can't
number,
be there, I'm going to
this
Costa
number
Rica. I'm
minus
like,
the hours, so it's a million.
good for you.
172, 546.
It was good.
Was it?
172,
I got sunburned,
546.
peeling everywhere.
Oh,
I've heard people
From
say
last
it's wonderful.
fiscal year?
yeah.
From the
Spring,
way he's
did y'all do a
saying
lot of
right
fishing?
now, he, as our
We went
potential
fishing one day
settle
with
up on
sunlight, but
Fifth
it's the
Cent.
wrong time of year.
That was just my,
I went down one time, and we went
172.
tarpon fishing.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
Dad said it was the
Not
greatest
enough.
tarpon fishing he's ever
for
done.
me, we need, because
Wonderful.
It's like, they're not the huge ones.
No,
They
but they
just kept
fight.
Because that's what I put in the
And
minutes.
then you're in these, well, we were in these little John boats,
What does that take
so
into
that,
consideration?
I mean, it pulls you, just, and I'm like, hold on now.
Consideration
So,
the-
all right, what I suggest that we might wanna do is,
It's budgeted at 3 million.
I might wanna get with Ray and Laura to clean all this up. And then we re-meet one more time before we send it,
With
you know,
that, it
we
might
need
be
to do that.
closer, but it's-
Cause Sunshine, she's on the
it's
committee.
about 600,000.
Oh,
Ray's on
yeah,
the
that's
committee.
right.
I would also just like to add, we also need to identify which pennies.
Okay,
Each of these need to be
Well, we
added to,
could-
because certain pennies, you can do certain things, and obviously, certain pennies you can't.
well, I tell you what, if we can,
One and two.
what we're gonna have to do is get it to be a clean copy, and then, I'm sorry,
So
get it to be a
Somebody
clean
says-
copy.
Reserves will be
It's covered, can be paid out of any reserve.
If we get it to be a clean copy, then we would come meet with you to about the pennies.
Yeah.
I think that,
Public facilities.
Did we get
come
the
out of,
5th cent
hey, Liz, can I call you
if it's
back
for
shortly?
sports, the
Okay.
convention center,
All right,
sports
bye-bye.
complex. Come out of
Yeah.
Clean it up and just send it
If
to
any
you, or
of
send it to the whole committee if you'd like. I did pretty good with the notes.
Okay,
I can have it cleaned
do
up.
that, and then,
A lot of restrictions?
I'll then
Yeah,
kind of
the-
compose,
the plan.
some of the terminology that I had used,
That's part of
and
it,
then
but,
we'll try to get a clean
outside
copy
of
Perfect.
that we
Funding you guys.
send to everybody.
Yeah,
I think
funding
that's
the,
the best way.
convention centers and that sort of it.
Ray, on this, where it says unified budget
Building stuff.
marketing reserve, is that the TDT restricted marketing reserve fund we're talking about?
Uh-huh.
Would start off with 2
Come
million.
from-
Yes.
And then at the end of the year, the carry forward,
January 30.
we would take 25% of the carry forward each year to put towards, to add to that 2 million.
With $10
That's the
million.
way I'm really thinking it. That's the way I was
You're
thinking
talking
it.
about to the
Unified budget.
The restricted funds?
Uh-huh. That if we take 25%,
I don't think you're gonna get county commissioners to approve a $10 million.
Yeah, I think
Cap?
it's high too. I just
think
think,
it's high.
I think it's a lot
Okay.
of money to put
I think-
aside and not use.
I think at the current level of funding that we're getting, I think 5 is sufficient
Okay.
based on what we experienced.
Yeah, I would
Okay,
support that.
you would, because you.
Not to get it chopped in half or anything like that, but I
Right.
think 5 is
Yeah.
legitimate.
Okay, because y'all are the ones that are gonna need it, so we want your
I
input.
mean, the dollars will grow, that's our plan, right? To keep growing at 6 to 8% a year. So we may have to revisit it sometime down the road,
Yeah.
but I think for now and in the next couple of years, I think that's.
Okay, all right.
So is these investments sit in an account for the county and they accrue interest? Where does that interest go? Does it go to the general budget or does it go in,
It
stays in
the-
108?
It stays in your fund.
Okay.
Interest is. right
Yeah,
now.
I know, but
But,
Interest rates are going up, not
yeah,
good.
as soon as they do that.
just, but I
yeah,
just meant
like-
accordingly to statute
Yeah.
or whatever
Yeah,
rules.
we generally don't budget interest. I've never budgeted for interest. But over the last couple of years with COVID, interest has just been in the
Yeah,
top.
it's
There's been
point
nothing.
Yeah,
oh,
we should have
one.
bought a subdivision with
I
11 million.
know,
Could have tripled it, but.
you're right.
Do we have an investment policy for the county? Conservative,
Oh, it's a
based
great
on,
concern.
based on government use and need?
Yes, it's designed for us not to lose money under any circumstances.
So we probably could buy good stocks, maybe it's.
Bitcoin.
Yeah, Bitcoin, yeah,
I think we should
exactly.
put 100% of it in Bitcoin.
Oh, yeah.
So Stefan, do what unified budget distribution allocation based on all these other numbers and getting to where, do you have a number that you think that should be? Based on the collections that you currently have and what
It's-
you,
You guys tell me, I need to get your secondary
Okay.
supplement this year. So you guys tell me how much from each penny, like I said, I got that $6.59 I can give to you, and however much from the other pennies to get you, is it 2 million, is it 3 million, is it 4 million, to get you through the end of the year for any cool
Okay.
special thing that you need to really push or.
and that was the 196,588 that I ran out just to make a pretty $10 million to start to allocation, but now it's 117
You don't think we
something.
could just make the special event reserve 500 and move that 300 back up to the 1 point, so instead of 1.1, you get 1.4.
I thought about taking that 8 and moving it to 5 too.
And give, so it goes back to closer to your number.
That's it. I thought about, I didn't necessarily love putting it there, but I thought about moving that to 5, because that's a lot.
Yeah, you guys will use the money now versus that'll just kind of sit there for a little while.
That,
Would
Good idea.
come out of special event?
Yeah, bring that down to
drop that to
5.
8, I mean, from 8 to 5,
Yeah.
and take that 5 and make it, take that 3 and move it up to the top to come up, back to unified budget for
I
the,
think we could, live
So
with
that
that.
covers,
But I don't know how to break it down over the cents.
I
I feel like
send-
if I did that, I'd do it wrong,
one,
because
two,
my
three.
math is, it's always slightly different than the
Um,
counties.
If you have a few minutes after this,
Yeah.
I'll come up to my office and,
Sure.
and we'll look at it.
Okay. That'd be great.
All right. Laura, you've got these numbers?
I believe so.
Okay.
Except for that unified budget, I've had like a few different numbers, but
Okay.
I'll get with Darren and whatever they come up
All
with.
right. We have a meeting, TDC next week, right, or week after
Usually
next?
after.
Um,
I left my phone at
I'm gonna
home, but
just,
it's the second Tuesday.
April the 12th.
okay. I'd love,
Yes, 2 weeks,
what?
2 weeks
Yeah,
from
today's-
yesterday.
okay. I would love to
Yesterday.
present this,
Yesterday was Tuesday.
I'd love to have this done so we could present it to the TDC. I don't know if it will be. That would require us meeting again next week with, after Laura and I work on the finished product to.
I'm
You,
out next week.
yeah,
I'm out next week too, but I can send invites and.
yeah.
We're on the right track here.
Yeah. Question, does it I mean,
We
can
can wait
wait?
until the next meeting.
Okay, let's do that, because I'd rather it be right.
Yeah, we can wait till June.
When do you think this needs to be
Because-
done, Stefan?
The money will sit there until, you know,
somebody spends it.
somebody So,
At the county commissioners,
so,
they meet twice a month.
so, yeah, I mean, nothing's really gonna move from where it's at,
Okay.
you know, until I get some type of recommendation, and I need that recommendation.
Okay.
So we can, I mean, right now, we're just meeting every other month for the TDC, but we can meet in May
Sure.
and have another meeting if
The
this,
TDC?
if this can, yeah, the
Yeah.
TDC, if this can be ready for May.
Yeah, I think it'd be ready for May. Ready by the 14th of April would be tough.
Yeah, no, I don't wanna,
Right.
I wanna make sure it's right. And we have
Okay.
everything
All right.
wordsmithed properly.
All right, let's,
So then we can do it May, I can schedule the chair, I can call a meeting.
sure,
So we'll plan to do that,
okay?
but we'll hold tight on posting that to just see where this process goes. We'll meet again and then see if we're ready to do that. If not, then we can wait till June and do it.
That
till
sounds
our
good to
normal
me.
scheduled meeting.
Then we need to plan our next meeting, and then it gives us time to come up with a cleaner product so that we can get everybody's opinion. And Stefan, we would need you to, the pennies, you know, that, because you will want that, right, to designate it out of what,
Correct, because some of these will, and some can go across pennies, and some
Yeah.
may be specific to a.
okay, because that's the part that,
So if y'all
I
can
have no
settle
idea.
a top line number today, that will now give us the balance
And
of
then,
how this
David,
shakes
would
out.
we be
That
the
would
ones
be
to
helpful.
kind of create how or what happens to be able to tap into the Unified Budget Marketing or TDT Restricted Marketing Reserve Fund?
I think so, any of these funds. I think this committee should be making a recommendation to the TDC that has for the restricted marketing fund, these are the restrictions on it and how it's triggered and how it's then funded once it's. Yeah, after it's replenished, how do we refund it?
Yeah.
Refill that balance and then the public facilities one, et cetera. So I think if we're creating these different buckets, each one of them, that's why I called it an operation agreement. I don't know what we call it, but,
right,
you know, the language that outlines its use and funding and mechanism, and spend mechanism, et cetera.
okay.
Does the county legal department going to weigh in, obviously, and have, like I said, do they have standard restrictive funds language that we should be working with them to make sure?
Check with Allison.
I mean, I know we have, like a reserve for contingency, which is an uber restricted reserve in the general fund. That's really the only one that technically applies to, where a supermajority of the board has to approve and for findings of fact to access those dollars, but generally they're only accessed, you know, with some type of natural disaster, you know, of Hurricane Ivan, for instance, you know, something like that, or the flood, 24 inches in 24 hours, or something like that.
Oil spill.
Well, still,
If that was something that we needed to take to the board, so, but that's probably a little bit more stringent than you guys need.
Well, I know you had advised us to remember we only have one source of income, so be more aggressive, and I didn't know if that would be where we would again want to do it on the legal side as well as on the amount that we put away, but that we protect it more thoroughly for that very same reason, is that we only have the one revenue source, whereas the county had all these. I was listening to you,
You are right.
at least that 2 minutes. My ADD hadn't kicked in completely.
I just think it sounds like you guys want some parameters put on everything and an understanding of how to access and how to use. So, I mean, that's reasonable.
Okay. I don't want to overthink it either.
We have a tourism development plan that was put in place when the tax was enacted. So it all has to make sure it follows that plan. That plan can be amended. So that plan was created through a referendum. like it was approved through a referendum of the citizens.
Yes.
To amend it, you don't have to do that.
Oh.
You can go through the county commission, a majority of the county commission. So that's another thing I think TDC should look at is just reviewing it and updating it. Maybe I'll bring that to this April meeting and discuss it.
Well, that would be good because that needs to be part, this needs to be part of that plan. Definitely, as to what reserves and so forth. So it should be amended. All right?
I would say, you know, certainly whatever you come up with, you know, if the board's gonna have to give their approval, you just might wanna consider what it takes to get their approval.
Count their votes.
Yeah. Yeah, for their approval, 3, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, but we gotta make sure we're presenting to them things that they will, those 3.
Oh, I know.
approve. Like a $10 million, you know,
Right.
balance is probably not gonna get approved.
Right,
And it's just, they're not gonna wanna tie that money up.
Yeah,
right.
you definitely, you got support on beach reimbursement.
Yeah.
I think they're fine with the marketing reserve.
Mhm.
Our hoteliers probably wouldn't like to see $10 million tied up either.
No, they definitely don't.
Yeah,
Right.
They've already told me that.
yeah. That's okay. I went big, hey, go big or go home. I
That's
went
it.
big
I
to start
agree.
with.
Well, facility, I think,
Yeah.
you know,
They're talking about it.
they're good with that.
I'd rather you guys spend it every year, rather than just let it pile up.
I know you
Yeah.
would.
You don't get to eat it,
So
and I
it's
don't
not
get to
gonna
eat
be
it,
called
and
sports facility.
Right.
somebody else is probably gonna eat it.
That
Understand.
allocation goes into the public facilities.
So we gotta get some additional
It's all
assets to
public facilities.
All right.
support that.
Is there any other further discussion about,
Absolutely, yeah.
we need to set up a meeting for our next meeting. The week of April the 18th. What about possibly the 19th of April? It's Tuesday. Anybody have any problems with that?
I'm gonna be in Savannah with the Pensacola Chamber of Commerce.
Okay. How long will you be gone that week?
I'm out the 18th through the 20th, available Thursday and Friday, 21st and
Right.
22nd.
What about the 21st with
I
everybody?
will be here 21st or 22nd.
All right. I'd like to find a time that we can all be here, because we want to get a finished product. So y'all,
Monday, the 25th.
I'm good the 25th.
I'm good.
Tuesday, I have a Triumph board meeting.
I'm not gonna be here the week of the well, you know what? I could be here the 27th.
I'm good that day. My wife's
Yeah, if we could do the morning,
birthday. During the day,
Morning,
it's
yeah,
all-
Yeah.
27th morning.
later.
it's an
10
administrative
o'clock,
professional day.
the 27th?
April 27th, 10 a.m.
10 a.m.
Okay.
I'll send out some invites.
Okay, here, right?
You want the calendar
Yes.
invite?
Mhm.
Okay. I'll put that on there. Well, I'll put it on there. That's the. Yeah. Put something else on there.
And that's Wednesday, the 27th at 10?
Yes. Good, then, Laura, we'll get together, or we can't get together. You just send it out,
Yes,
okay?
I'll type up all these notes and make it
All right,
more legible for you guys.
thank you.
And once y'all kind of figure out the numbers, you know, like within your pots, then
Yes.
we'll look at which pennies,
Okay, that'll be good,
you know,
yeah,
with what we have,
right.
you know, then that's the next consideration is where those funds exist right now. And
Okay,
after we net out whatever the unified budget's gonna get,
Okay.
then we'll go.
yeah. After y'all net out what the unified, then will you give that amount? Because that's what we're gonna be carrying over, right? Yeah, so we'll need that amount.
Plug that in.
All right. So when you do that, who do I? or
Um,
Stefan do
Send
that?
it
I
to
do
Tina, once
Okay.
you've got that amount, because we can't talk outside of this room about these items.
You can send that number to me, because
Yeah,
you're
you
gonna
can
have to
send-
send it to
yeah.
me anyway. I'm not
Send it to you,
but I need to know it anyway, because we'll have to plan on adjusting our budget accordingly, so
Yeah,
I'll
so
need
that's
to
a good
know.
idea.
I'll need to know that number.
Well, it seems like she can send it out, but y'all just can't comment on it.
Yeah.
Correct.
Right.
Which is why I sent it to myself and then blank copy everybody else. Because the whole don't reply all doesn't always work.
Yeah. It's just hard to keep focused on this.
Yay, sunshine.
All right, is there any other business to come before this group? If not, then we'll plan to meet on the 27th, and we're adjourned. Good deal.
Oh, man, she have some pictures. I'd like to see some pictures.
So what'd you go fishing for?
Well, I wanted to go fishing for rooster fish.
Oh, I never heard that.